Okay, so the narcissist loves to ghost you. They do that to try to control you. You are actually not really ghosting the narcissist. I have to say, when you are actually ghosting the narcissist, it's you just actually going no contact. It's you actually, I would call it self preservation. So I want to kind of just distinguish that a little bit because they do it to control you, to manipulate you, to punish you, to be mean to you, to degrade you, to actually also get off on it. They kind of think it's funny. They get narcissistic supply from it. Their motivation behind it is very different than your motivation behind it. Let's just call it that. So when you do it, when you go no contact, it's really you in self defense mode, self preservation mode. It's you actually deciding it's finally time to get rid of the toxicity and the fumes, the toxic fumes in your life so that you can start to heal, so that you can actually start to move on. And by the way, as a negotiation expert, as a person, I really focus my time, my career, my energies in helping you create strategy and that for the actual negotiation process. It is so much better if your mind is clearer and you can start to put some distance between you and those triggers. So I call it ghosting the narcissist in this particular video, but I do want to say it's really more you going no contact. So what happens is they start to blow up your phone. They start to blow up any way that they can. So they really want to get in touch with you as much as possible. They just start to flood you with in any way that they can. They cannot take that you are now doing this to them. So if they have a tendency to stalk you, they might do that. And I do want to say that if you do feel like you're in danger in any way, you should definitely call the police. You should definitely get a restraining order if you have what it takes to get that. Every area, every jurisdiction has their own requirements for what you need for that. So I would encourage you to reach out to an attorney or law enforcement or whoever you need to find out what the requirements are for that. It's a little bit of an aside, but I do need to say that if you feel like you're in danger. So, but they may do that if they have that tendency, or they may take another tact. They might start love bombing you and hoovering you, and because they're kind of like desperate. They get desperate. So they go back to the well of what worked, sometimes, oh, let me love bomb you, let me hoover you, let me go back to what was working in the first place. They definitely will be watching you. They become obsessed with watching you to see what it is that you're doing, because you are their form of oxygen, food. Supply to them is oxygen, food, it's lifeblood. You are their possession. It's not a love. So don't confuse it with that. They own you. You belong to them. It's like their toy or their jar of jelly that belongs on their cabinet shelf. Don't confuse it with love or care, or that they care about you as a person. This is their thing that belongs to them, and it's out of their control. And so they're watching you. So they may talk to the people around you. They may try to talk to people that they think know you. They're going to try to show that they can be near the people that are near to you, and create a relationship with the people that are near to you to show that they're still around. Or they may try to show that they're doing better than you, or that they're still doing great. Or they may try to show that they've got a supply lined up that can be perceived as better than you. They may try to one up you, try to make you jealous, or they may try to get you back. And if they try to get you back, with their hoovering, and you refuse that, then there's other things that happen. And I have a whole video on what happens when you refuse the hoover. You can definitely check that out if you'd like. And then it may degrade into like verbal abuse, for refusing all of that, attacking you for leaving, verbally abusing you or attacking you for guilting you. How could you do this? Or you're horrible for doing this, or all kinds of horrible things that they're going to say or do. The fact that you're no longer there, which I always find really interesting. It's like, oh, why would I go back to that? But okay, they literally just go insane sometimes, or they might even like completely collapse. Sometimes like it eventually degrades down into a full-on collapse, and we've seen that sometimes too. They just completely go crazy if things don't go the way that they want them to. I mean, they're basically like 2-year-olds having a tantrum on the floor. Things don't go their way. They just like go insane. So the thing I want you to know though is that they are the worst right before they're ready to give up, and that actually means that you're getting somewhere. I know that sounds crazy, but when you're negotiating with them, when those things start to happen, that actually means that you're now reconditioning them into where you want to go, because they've conditioned you in a certain direction. So you need to recondition them back into a different direction. And that means that that power dynamic is actually shifting. It means you're actually getting where you want to go. When you are negotiating with them, there's no magic wand. This is a little bit of a long game, but that means you're actually getting where you want to go. So I just want you to not take the bait, because they're going to throw bait out and they're going to say and do whatever they can that worked in the past to get you to take the bait. And I want you to remind yourself that you're not going to take the bait. So I want you to comment below, I won't take the bait. Okay. I won't take the bait.
Today's topic is ghosting, and I wanted to talk about ghosting and the difference between ghosting and no contact, because I think it's really important that you understand that one is something that the narcissist uses and the other is something that we as the victims and targets of narcissists need to do. So ghosting is something that a narcissist uses in order to manipulate you, in order to control you, in order to hurt you, to abuse you. So they stop talking to you, they stop communicating with you, so that you panic and you start really trying to oh, please take me back. It's all part of the trauma bonding. It's part of that whole cycle of love bombing versus devaluing. So, it's love bombing, devaluing, discard. And I do have videos on each one of the areas, the phases of the relationship. So if you haven't watched those videos, you should go back and check them out. But it starts with love bombing. It always ends with a discard. But in between there, they can actually vacillate between all of the different phases of the relationship. So it could be love bombing, then devaluing, then discard, and then back to love bombing. You're kind of going back and forth all of the time. Whereas no contact is something that we use as the targets, as the victims, to finally protect ourselves from the abuse, to finally put up a barrier against that constant love bombing, devaluing, discard, toxic stew that you're constantly being subjected to, the gaslighting, the intimidation tactics. And when you go into the process of either you trying to discard a narcissist in the relationship, or they're discarding you, it doesn't really matter. As long as they see their narcissistic supply walking out the door, and they're afraid that you're going to expose them, then they're going to want to get you first. And that's why in a divorce setting, or even a breakup of a business partner, or any kind of a setting where you're trying to extricate yourself from that relationship, the first thing they're going to do is try to get you first, try to take you down. It becomes the fight of your life, because with a narcissist, you're either for them or against them. It can't be that you just happily shake hands, come to a nice little fair resolution and walk away, because it's not about that for them. It's about winning. It's about taking you down. It's about making you look bad. It's about, they get supply from that. And so normal people go, well, okay, what does the law say about how we end this thing? And let's just come up with a nice resolution that is basically what the law would provide. I've had many narcissistic clients who have said to me, I'd rather pay you than the other person, because they actually prefer to pay the lawyer because of the supply that they get, that what feeds their ego. And if you want to know more about narcissistic supply, I do have a video in this Narcissism 101 series on narcissistic supply, so go and check that out. But if you, what most lawyers and judges do not understand, the court system does not understand, is that these people don't want to settle the case. That's why they constantly move the goalpost and constantly, come up with reasons why they can't settle the case at this particular time. And of course, it's always your fault, right? So, but ghosting is a tactic that they use to stop communicating and stop talking with a person, but it's used as a method of manipulation, a method of abuse. It is something that they try to torture their victims or their targets by using. So that's what that is. And I'm just looking to see where all of you guys are from. Let me know. I love seeing where you guys are from. And somebody's saying, I'm the only one who ever apologized. Yeah, I did a whole video on do narcissists apologize? And if so, do they mean it? But, narcissists use what we call faux apologies, which is they really only apologize in order to try to manipulate you again.
Have you ever met somebody, they started off to be the most charming, charismatic person you've ever met in your life, then they turned out to be your worst nightmare, and then when you go to negotiate with them, they're a living hell? Well, I developed something called the SLAY method of negotiating with narcissists, and it has helped tens of thousands of people in more than 150 countries win, go from feeling drained and defeated to getting the outcomes they want. And the reason why it works is because I spent more than 20 years studying narcissism as a trial attorney, and now I'm here to help you win too, and also take your suffering and turn it into your superpower. Take your pain and turn it into profit, peace, and purpose as a highly specialized, high conflict negotiation coach. If you want to learn how to do it, then just go to RebeccaZung.com/apply, and I will show you how. So now let's talk about the difference between silent treatment, no contact, and ghosting. So all three are things that you experience when you're dealing with narcissists. But two of them are done by the narcissist, and one of them is done by you, the victim or the target of the narcissist's abuse or behavior. So let's talk first about silent treatment. So silent treatment is something that the narcissist uses in order to gain control over you. It's something that they do to make you upset, to make you squirm. Remember that the narcissist is doing whatever they can to get control over you, because that gives them a form of narcissistic supply. If you want to know more about narcissistic supply, you should definitely check out my video on narcissistic supply. Basically, what it is anything that feeds a narcissist's ego. And I kind of liken it to almost like the tip of the iceberg kind of a thing, because the stuff that feeds a narcissist's ego that you can see on top of the iceberg is the stuff that would feed anybody's ego, because who doesn't like getting compliments or respect or having prestigious you know, life or friends or a nice house or whatever it is. So those are sort of like the things that first come to mind when people think, oh, feed their ego. That's what they want. They want to, you know, compliments, and they want their ego to be fluffed up in some way. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg, because remember that in some ways, you could say that we all have narcissistic traits or tendencies, but I don't really call it that. I know some people do. I don't really call it that, because a narcissist to me is all the way at the end of the spectrum. It's a person who is pathologically in need of anything that feeds their ego. All human beings want to feel seen, heard, and know that we matter. That's why my book is called Negotiate Like You Matter. When I wrote the book, I didn't specifically address narcissists throughout the entire book. I do reference narcissists some, but when you're dealing with a narcissist, what you're really dealing with is somebody who has no sense of self. They need to get as much out of the people around them as they can, almost like squeezing lemons or sucking blood. You know, that's why sometimes they're called energy vampires. Or I remember when I was dealing with narcissists, I remember feeling like they were leeches. And that was just the only word I could come up with, was like leeches or parasites. And they almost want to become you. And so that's why sometimes you find them like staring at you or watching you. And if you want to know more about that creepy narcissist stare, check out my video on why the narcissist is always watching you, because that's part of what it is that they're doing. They kind of almost want to become you in some ways. So because they have no sense of self. So the rest of that iceberg is the other stuff, what I call the dark underbelly, the part that they don't show the world. And that is that they get narcissistic supply from treating people poorly, from being scary, from intimidating you, gaslighting you, projection, denying, deflection, control tactics, smear campaigns, flying monkeys. It's this whole nasty, toxic stew that you're subjected to, and it becomes really, really traumatic and difficult to get out of once they start that toxic stew formula on you. So that's what's happening to feed their ego, to feed their need for narcissistic supply. So when they give you the silent treatment, it's actually just a form of trying to control you. So they are stopping talking to you, you know, via text or email or whatever, like they're at work, or maybe you live in separate places, and all of a sudden you can't get in touch with them. And so that they have this, they're giving you the silent treatment, and it's to try to get you to come back and grovel and say, oh, please talk to me. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I was, you know, I shouldn't have said that. You know, they want you to beg to get back into their web of control. And they love that. They love to see you squirm that way. That totally gets them that narcissistic supply that they so deeply that they so deeply crave. And closely related to the silent treatment is ghosting. But ghosting is actually when they're ready to be done and they're just gone. And now all of a sudden you just never hear from them again. And that will happen when they don't feel like there's any source of supply left that they can squeeze out of you. So they just move on to other sources of supply. As long as they think that there's some form of supply for them to squeeze out of you, even if they've long moved on to other sources of supply, they'll come back. And the supply doesn't necessarily mean that they think that you're going to tell them how wonderful they are. It means as long as they think that they can scare you, control you, intimidate you, jerk you around, treat you poorly, make you feel intimidated, all of those things, they will continue to come back into your space. Or maybe just being attached to you in some way gives them some sort of prestige, or just, because maybe you're more powerful than they are, just getting your attention sometimes is all they want. So, but that's when they're coming back and they're hoovering and all that sort of thing. So ghosting just means they're gone and you never hear from them again. And that just means that you're no longer a good source of supply for them. And if you are ready to get out of this narcissistic relationship today, give me a today in the comments. Okay, so now let's talk about going no contact. This is something that you do as the narcissist victim, or the target of the narcissistic abuse. And this is something that you do to protect yourself, to put up boundaries, to stop that narcissistic abuse, to say it's not okay anymore, I'm ready to move on, and I'm ready to take control back of my life. So one is done, ghosting or silent treatment, they're used by the narcissist as a weapon, whereas you are actually using going no contact as a shield, as a barrier, as a protection for yourself, where you're actually just saying, it's not okay anymore. I'm blocking you on my phone. I'm blocking you on my social media. And I don't want to see what you're doing. I don't want you to see what I'm doing. I don't want to interact with you anymore. I want to erase you from the CPU of my life. I don't want to have to deal with you ever again. And that's what I had to do with narcissists in my life. And, I still have to deal with them popping up every once in a while, unfortunately. But I keep up super strong boundaries, and I try to keep it to a very, very bare minimum, which is why I don't even mention who they are in these videos, because I don't want them coming back. I want them to stay away, and I would like to wipe them from the CPU of my life as if they never existed. They never came into my life. They never came into my world. And I highly recommend that you do the same. It is so much better. The air smells cleaner, the sky is bluer, the grass is greener. It's definitely better to get that negative energy out of your space. So that's what it means to go no contact. Have you ever been ghosted or lied to, and you're just feeling so awful inside, and you're sitting there and you're feeling like so defeated, and you're wondering, should you try to go back to this person? Maybe you're wondering if the person is gone, or the person is still in your life and still just treating you really poorly. And you're wondering if you should just keep them in your life. They've betrayed you. They've treated you badly. Maybe they're sort of in and out of your life and they're not good for you. And you're wondering what you should do about it. Or they're just gone. And you're wondering whatever happened to them. You're just feeling really, really crappy about it. And you're feeling like, what did you do? And maybe you're just feeling like you're a bad person. There's something wrong with you. And you just can't trust again. And there's all kinds of stuff that you're feeling. And you're wondering, how do you stop feeling defeated? How do you stop feeling like, it was you, or all these bad feelings are going through your head? And there's a couple of things I want you to know. First of all, I want you to think about the fact that it was not you. If you're dealing with a narcissist, if you're dealing with a bad person, consider the source. I mean, my dad used to say, consider the source all the time. One of my favorite books on the planet is The Four Agreements. And if you haven't read that book, you need to go get that book. It's a tiny little book. It's something you can read in an afternoon a couple of hours. It's 4 agreements that you make with yourself. And one of the agreements is never take anything personally, because people treat other people is always a reflection of the way they feel about themselves, good or bad. I mean, if people treat other people well, it's because they feel good about themselves inside. So if they're acting out of love, then they won't have treated you poorly in the first place. I mean, if somebody doesn't want to be with you, then they'll just straight up tell you, I don't want to be with you, and here's why, and that sort of thing. If somebody has ghosted you, they've given you a gift, because they've told you what kind of person they are. They've given you a gift. Honestly, if they had stayed around in your life, they would have just been causing you more and more misery all the time. So they've truly given you a gift, because they've now left a space for somebody wonderful to be in your life. You don't need that type of person in your life. You want that space to be open for a good person to be in your life. You had it confirmed that that person is not a good person. And, the thing that I've learned is that the closure that you're going to get is that you have to do your own closure. You have to learn how to do your own closure for yourself. I learned how to do that on my own after I dealt with a narcissist in my own life. And you can't sit there clinging on to a person who didn't want you. I mean, I used to say to people all the time, why do you want to be with a person who doesn't want to be with you? There's no power in that. There's certainly no power in wanting to be with a person who doesn't want to be with you. There's certain ways to get a narcissist to respect you, and that is definitely not one of them. By the way, I did a whole video on the only way to get a narcissist to respect you, and you can definitely check that out if you want to check that out. But that's definitely not the way to get a narcissist to respect you. You want to be in your own power. And one of the ways to do that is to be with a person who definitely wants to be with you. And you deserve that. Feel that. Feel that you know that in yourselves. And remember what Maya Angelou said when she said, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. She was so right about that. People will show you who they are, and you set the bar for how people treat you. You show them. You don't get your goals, you get your standards. You condition people on how to treat you, and people will treat you accordingly. So when someone shows you how they treat you, their words don't matter, their actions matter. So, I mean, they can say all kinds of things, they love you or they don't, whatever, but it's their actions that actually matter. And they will demonstrate to you how it is that they actually are treating you. And you deserve so much more than that. So don't worry about closure. Don't try to get them to explain what they were doing, or don't you try to explain. Don't try to get them to acknowledge your actions. None of that. It's not going to happen. You're never going to get that kind of closure. Just move forward, find yourself, find your power in yourself. Just remember that if they've moved on, they gave you a gift. They gave you a gift of showing you who they actually are. Just say, I know my value. And I want you to write that in the comments below. I know my value. Just start feeling that power, and pay attention to your gut. I mean, if somebody is really there for you, you'll feel it. You'll know it. Your vibrational energy knows it. It knows it on a cellular level, and you will be able to tell if they are actually there for you. So if you've been ghosted or lied to, you will know. And don't allow it. Move forward. Find the quality person. I always say, defend your light with your life. Find the high vibrational energy people. Be with people who want to be with you. That makes the difference in your life. Even if it's, the 5 most quality people in the world, that will make a huge difference in the value of your life. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's be real. Therapy can feel like a really big investment, but your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost $100 to $250 per session, but with BetterHelp, you can save up to 50% per session on average. You pay a flat weekly fee, which means more peace of mind for less. Therapy should feel accessible, not like a luxury. BetterHelp gives you that, all from the comfort from your home. And with over 30,000 therapists to choose from and 5 million people served globally, this is the world's largest online therapy platform, and you can switch therapists at any time. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/negotiate today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/negotiate. We're diving into the topic today. What narcissists do when you're not looking. What are they doing? The first thing they'll be doing, they're going to be stalking you. I mean, maybe not openly. Some of them might be doing it openly. Hopefully not. If they are, definitely call the police or whatever you need to do to protect yourself. But they're going to be looking at your social media. They're going to be trying to figure out what it is that you're up to. They might send out their little minions to go check out and see what you're doing. That's why you want to try to block them on social media if you can. Block them, change all your passwords. Make sure that you change passwords on your social media, on all your logins, maybe even monthly for a while if you need to. Go no contact as soon as you can, for sure. They're going to be checking out to see what it is that you're doing, if they can. They're not going to take it lying down, even if they are walking away from you. That's the crazy thing, because they still want to get their form of supply from you if they can. They're going to want to keep their new form of supply, but they also want to keep the old form of supply from you if they can. They like it all. What else are they going to be doing while they're gone and you've left? Okay. And you've said, okay, this is fine. They're going to be telling everybody that they left you, that it was fine, that this is what they wanted anyway, that it's a good thing, because they want to preserve some level of whatever. So now they want to make sure that you get smeared before you can smear them. They want to expose you before you can expose them. They want to take you down before you can take them down. So this is where the birth of that smear campaign comes in. They got to rewrite history. They've got to get everybody on board. So brace yourself for this one. Even if they say, oh, I want this to be nice. I want this to be as good as possible. Let's part as friends. You can't believe this. I mean, if they were lying when they were with you, whether it was as business partners or as a boss or a colleague or whoever it was, they're not going to be suddenly wonderful at the end. It doesn't make any sense. So you can't believe that they're going to be. They will tarnish your reputation. They will spread lies about you, and they will recruit those quote unquote flying monkeys, the people that they want to be like on their side in their army because they're all insecure. They don't want to feel like they're by themselves. They want you to feel abandoned and alone. They want you to feel isolated. They want you to feel ganged up on. They want you to feel bullied. They want you to feel like you're wrong, they're right, and they're higher and you're lower. It's crucial for them to stay strong and you're the weak one. And so they want to be the one doing all the manipulating. And so they want to be the one using their tactics on you. And so they will line up their smear campaign. And is it going to be open and like this? Maybe, but maybe not. It might be in terms of care. That's how a covert narcissist tends to be. A covert narcissist tends to be more in terms of care. So it might look more like, oh, I'm so concerned about Susie. I'm so worried about her. And, she's been so depressed. She's just been, I don't know how she's going to make it. I don't know if Susie's going to be able to take care of the kids. I want to help her. I just want to help her and just
be supportive. So it comes through like that, even though, the person's really smearing Susie in terms of care. You got to be careful about those ones, those covert ones, even though they're smearing the person. So sometimes it's more like that. Sometimes the smearing is in terms of guilt. Oh, I can't believe that they left me here all alone with no money. And you're left with plenty in the bank account, and you never really left in the first place, but they make it seem like you left with nothing. There's that kind of smearing too. There's the guilt kind of smearing, the playing the victim card, making it seem like, telling everybody who will listen, like you abandoned them, you abandoned the kids, they're the suffering one, you're the heartless one, you ran off, designed to guilt trip the whole world, that sort of thing. There's that as well. Anybody who'll listen, you're heartless, you're abandoned, you're cruel, they're the victim. So there's the smearing, rewriting history. Then what else is going to happen while you're gone? They're going to be brooding. They're going to be depressed. They're going to be by themselves, thinking how horrible it's been, rewriting history. They were so good. They gave you everything. How could you be doing this? They might be sending you messages. I can't believe you're abandoning me or this company or this family or this thing. So they might be trying to send you something. They might be trying to send you something that might be, oh, that wasn't meant for you. Getting my cancer results back this week. Oh, was that for you? Oh, I didn't mean to send that to you. Oh, you wouldn't want to be worried about that. Don't you worry yourself about that. Just to try to hook you in, try to get you interested, trying to suck you back into the whole zone of drama. Stalk you, tell everybody how awful it's been, tell everybody you left, plot and plan, feel sorry for themselves, rewrite history, smear you, look for ways to plot at you, tell their story to you, tell everybody who will listen, look for ways to plot at you, look for ways to smear you, tell everybody who will listen. But fear not, my warriors, I've got a little something for you. If you want strategies to stay strong during no contact, I got something for you. While they're gone, and then they suddenly appear, that's called hoovering. So what you're going to do when you see that little Hoover DM pop up in your phone or in your Instagram or in your Facebook or in your email or whatever, you're going to see it and you're going to go, oh, I know what you are. Oh, no, I'm not falling for that. So you're just going to say, boundaries. And so I want you to put that in the comments below, boundaries, right now, boundaries. Be aware of such little plots and twists and plans. You're not going to fall for it. Another thing is, that little guilt trip thing through families and friends where they try to use your family and friends to guilt trip you. They'll have your cousin come. Oh, she's not doing so well. Can't you come and talk to her? Can't you just try? Or, a business partner or somebody that try to communicate through somebody close to you so they can try to understand what's going on. No, don't allow it. Keep to your boundaries. I mean, another thing that they will try to do is they'll see that you're not responding. They attempt to get at you by completely ghosting you, completely getting you to get back at you through not responding at all. Stay strong. Focus on your healing journey. That's what you need to focus yourself on. There you have it. That's what narcissists do when you go no contact with them. They're going to try every trick in the book, but you're going to be armed with this knowledge and you're going to stick strong to your self-care and you can rise above this manipulation. Everything they do is a manipulation. Remember that.
You are ready to reject a narcissist, go no contact with the narcissist. What do you need to know? All right. So no contact lets you know that you are onto them. You know, they now know that their secret is out, right? Because, you know, they think that you have been snowed by them. They think that you have been love bombed by them. They think that you have been conditioned by them. And remember that they have no inner sense of value. And they have this deep, deep, deep shame, deep shame. And so they're constantly trying to cover that up. They kind of lead these double lives. I do have a whole video on that, why narcissists lead double lives, which you can definitely check out. But they have these deep sense of, you know, no inner value whatsoever, and deep sense of self-hatred, and they don't want you to know that. And so when you go to leave them, you know, that's like their worst case scenario. They don't want to be abandoned. That's like the last thing that they want, even though they've treated you horribly the whole time, by the way, which is the whole irony of the whole thing. In a way, like, you think, didn't you want me to leave you? Like, you hate me. But yet when you do try to leave, they try to make you feel guilty. What are you leaving for? I mean, it's such a cycle of toxicity. Is awful. I mean, the whole time you've been there, they've been horrible to you. But when you go to leave, then now they really know that, you know, the jig is up. And they do start to feel a sense of regret, but they're not going to let you know that, because for them, like, this world is very black and white. And once you leave, you become public enemy number one. And, you know, that shame is like so much worse. That self-hatred, that self-loathing that they feel is just so much worse for them. And it really kind of destroys them in a lot of ways. But they do go into this self-defense mode, and it becomes like this war. They have this narcissistic injury that's deep inside of them that was created when they were very young, and it gets exposed. And when you leave them, is like a scab is ripped off. And now that narcissistic rage comes flying out, and they've got to make sure that they get you before you get them. And so they want to make sure they, to the world, you look like the loser, because they can't look like the loser. You have to look like the loser, because how they look to the world is everything. So you have to look like you're the loser. They want to make sure they take you down before you can take them down. So if it's a divorce situation, and they're going to go into this annihilation mode, and they'll file all kinds of stuff, maybe in the family law court. I mean, depending on the type of narcissist they are, it could be crazy motions. It could be all kinds of false things, false allegations. They could threaten you. They could line up flying monkeys. They could get all these people to try to believe lies against you. I mean, depending on the type of narcissist that they are, how malignant they are, how psychopathic they are, how much they really hate you, how vindictive they are. But thing is, you got to remember that you have to slay it. Slay meaning my form of slay and your form of slay. But slay for my form is strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. Strategy, leverage, anticipate what they're going to do and be 2 steps ahead of them, and focus on you, your mental health, your case. The best defense is a good offense. And 90% of winning is your mental, is knowing that you can win before you even get there. So you can do it. You absolutely can, but you just got to make sure that you are prepared ahead of time. You absolutely can win, but you've got to be prepared. And remember, the best leverage is going to be figuring out what form of supply is going to be more important for them to protect than the supply that they get from jerking you around. So what supply is going to be more important for them to protect, which is always going to be how they look, than the supply that they get from, jerking you around or making you miserable, manipulating you. I mean, because that's always, some sort of supply that they get as well. So just make sure that they see that you aren't being baited, that you aren't being manipulated, that you aren't moved by their craziness, because they get supply from that. And then just keep walking, right? Don't look back. Don't even twitch. Don't even switch. Don't even move, because that gives them supply. And remember that you can slay this. And I want you to write in the comments right now, I can slay this, because you can. You absolutely can. And that's what the narcissist reaction is to rejection or no contact. Remember, the narcissist is more afraid of you than you are of them. They absolutely are. And they are worse before they get better. So just anticipate that. But that's the reaction to rejection or no contact. I mean, it's not going to be good. You know that it's not going to be good. So just expect that. So what? They can act like a 2-year-old, like a toddler on the floor. So what? You know what? You're bigger, you're better, you can do it, right? Summer's right around the corner and I'm already planning my next getaway. I love using points for travel and I'm always looking for ways to earn more. Here's a life hack I wish I'd known sooner. When you pay your rent through Bilt, you earn flexible, transferable points and unlock exclusive benefits along the way. Let me explain. There's no cost to join, and when you pay your rent through Bilt, you unlock flexible points that can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines and a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. When you pay your rent through Bilt, you unlock 2 powerful benefits. First, you earn one of the industry's most valuable points on rent every month, no matter where you live or who your landlord is. Your rent now works for you. Second, you gain access to exclusive neighborhood benefits in your city. Bilt's neighborhood benefits are things like extra points on dining out, complimentary post-workout shakes, free mats or towels at your favorite fitness studios, and unique benefits or experiences that only Bilt members can access. And when you're ready to travel, Bilt points can be converted to your favorite miles and hotel points around the world, meaning that your rent can literally take you places. So if you're not earning points on Bilt rent, my question is, what are you waiting for? Start paying your rent through Bilt and take advantage of your neighborhood benefits by going to joinbilt.com/negotiate. That's joinbilt.com/negotiate. Make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. That's joinbilt/negotiate to sign up to joinbilt.com/negotiate today. So how does a narcissist handle rejection or no contact? Well, as I said, not well, and that may actually be an understatement, because the thing with narcissists is that they have no inner sense of value. They need to get all of their value from the external, and how they do that is in the form of what we call narcissistic supply. So they're going to try to suck supply from everywhere that they possibly can. And the only reason why they attach themselves to people is because they're looking to feed that beast, that never-ending black hole that's inside of them that must be fed with narcissistic supply. So narcissistic supply is that external sense of value that they try to cover up their inner sense of fragility and having no value, and that tiny little ego that's inside of them. They try to lather a big cover up on top of it. And they do that in the form of narcissistic supply. So supply can be anything in the form of compliments, money, big house, big car, the right spouse, the right friends, living in the right place, a huge bank account, big salary, all of those kinds of things feed a narcissist's ego and gives them that external sense of value that they so desperately need. The other form of narcissistic supply can also be um, devaluing somebody, debasing them, degrading them, cutting them down, judging them, making them squirm. All of those things, delight the narcissist in a way because it gives them a sense of control. It makes them feel like they're better than you. And so that also feeds that beast, that necessary beast of feeling that they need for endless supply. So when a narcissist chooses a target, which, by the way, if you think that you might be a target of a narcissist, you should definitely check out my video on Are You a Narcissist Magnet? And I'll drop a link to that below. But if you are a narcissist magnet and you have been a target or a victim of a narcissist, then you should know that the reason why they selected you, they chose you, is because they felt that they could get supply from you. So a lot of times they choose empaths. They choose people who are kind, who are considerate, who are very loving, who are going to be willing to help them in some way. And they're seeing, okay, I can get value from this person. Because remember, your value to a narcissist is just the value that you can bring to them. It doesn't have anything to do with, giving you anything. It's like, okay, how can I suck value out of this person? It might be that you look the right way, or that you come from the right people, or that you know the right people, or that you have the right status, or whatever it is. This, because they can't connect on a real level. They can't truly feel empathy or care for another person. So they just want to know, what can you do for me? So your value to a narcissist is just the value that you bring to them. And as long as you're bringing value to them, then you get to stay in their space. If you're no longer bringing value to them, then they really don't have any use for you. But they can be discarding you and still have use for you because they can make you squirm. So if you turn around and you reject that narcissist and you go no contact, you are basically cutting off their supply. And so it's not going to go well for them, or you, actually, mostly for you. Because they have this narcissistic injury, and that injury is that scab, that little inner person, that frightened child, because something happened to a narcissist at some point in their life, probably their childhood, which caused them to have trauma and broke something inside of their head. And there's that little bit of narcissistic, that narcissistic injury is inside that little person. And so what happens is, when somebody leaves a narcissist and triggers that narcissistic injury is inflamed in some way, then it can trigger narcissistic rage. And narcissistic rage looks like, I'm pretty sure you know what it looks like, but it can look like basically an adult having a 2-year-old tantrum, screaming, yelling, intimidation tactics, lying about you, smear campaigns, going after you. And if they're a covert narcissist, they're going to be lining up their flying monkeys, trying to get everybody against you. All narcissists, dealing gaslighting. If you want to know more about that, you should check out my video on gaslighting techniques. But the other thing that they're going to do is potentially violence, stalking, threats of violence, especially if they are a malignant narcissist. A malignant narcissist is the scariest form of narcissist. And I have a video on that you're going to want to check out too. They're the ones that actually have an overlay of an antisocial personality and paranoia. And so they tend to be, even take rejection or no contact so much worse. So one thing that you should know is that rejection is the thing that narcissists fear the most. That's the one thing they do not want to happen to them. And so if you reject them, then that's like in some ways the worst thing that could possibly happen for them, because you're taking away, you're snatching away that oxygen that they need, that narcissistic supply. You're taking it from them. And they really think that that's the worst thing that you could possibly do. So they're probably going to go after you, or they might just try to punish you in other ways. But punishment is definitely something that they are going to want to be plotting. They're going to want to get you back. They're going to want to make sure you pay for, making them look bad in any way, shape, or form, or rejecting them. How could you possibly do that? And if this sounds like you and you're dealing with a narcissist in your life and you are so ready to get them out of your life, give me an "I'm ready" in the comments. If you're lucky, the narcissist might just never speak to you again, and maybe they think that's your punishment. If that happens to you, thank your lucky stars, because most narcissists don't take rejection and no contact in that way. As many of you know who've watched a lot of my videos, I've had to deal with a couple of narcissists in my own life, not as husbands, thank God, but as people who were close enough to me to wreak havoc and cause damage. And I know for me, what they ended up doing is, I try to go no contact myself, which is something I highly recommend that you do, is go no contact as fast as you possibly can. But then you're going to experience all of these things. And remember when I tell you this, that narcissists are the worst right before they're getting ready to give up. But sometimes their ego, they think they look more confident by going after you. And so I know in my own life, I've had to deal with a couple of covert narcissists. And so they felt entitled to do certain things to me, or go through other people to try to get to me, or get me, riled up, or get me upset about things. One of them was an extended member of my family, and so, tried to use family members to go after me in certain ways. And it's just, it's not pleasant. It's not fun. It's awful to deal with. But it's definitely worse to continue to have that narcissist in your life. And please remember that narcissists are very clever. They know how to bring you in. They know how to love bomb you. That's what they did in the first place, to love bomb you. And so they're going to try to do whatever they can to love bomb you back in. Oh, come on back. Things are going to be different. It's going to be better. Because even if they were on the verge of rejecting you, they can't be rejected. They don't want to be the ones being rejected. So they may try to figure out a way to claw their way back into your life. Don't fall for it. Don't buy it. Just keep on walking, move forward. Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. So once you've already seen how they can be, don't expect them to change. They can't be rehabilitated. They can pretend to behave. They know what good behavior looks like. It doesn't mean that you're going to get them to actually care and have empathy. So there's a lot of people in this world, 7.5 billion people. Find other people to hang out with, find other people to be around. So when it's time to reject that narcissist and go no contact, expect these types of behaviors, but just hold firm, because you can do this. Just hang on, don't give in, don't give up, just keep on walking. So thanks so much for stopping by here today. If you like this video, give it a like, give it a share, drop me a comment, let me know that you were here. And if you're getting ready to negotiate with a narcissist, please make sure to grab my free Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet. You can download it below, or you can just go to winmynegotiation.com and grab it there. Now, let's talk about the 6 things that narcissists do when you try to go no contact, which I highly recommend that you do. And I've had to do it myself with a couple of narcissists. It's never fun. It's never great. They try to make it almost impossible. They try to make it so that you really don't want to have to do that. But you definitely do have to do that because they will eventually take over your soul. Like literally, I describe it as like pods. I know there was some movie, like, you know, I don't know if it was in the 60s or something, like a long time ago, where like these pods like came and sat down next to people and like took all of their like information and like basically took over their bodies. And that's how I feel about narcissists. Like they're these pods that just come into your life and steal you, and you end up feeling like you're like being choked to death, or like, I don't know, my situation, where I talked a lot about this, by the way, in a couple of recent videos. One was my toxic relationships, and the other one was, I don't normally share this, my own story of bullying. But like in my situation, I felt like one of the narcissists was literally trying to like become me, like stand in my shoes and be me, and but also like was devaluing me and doing things to me at the same time. It was super weird and really awful. And so that's kind of how you start to feel, right? And so you have to go no contact in order to like, it's like not too dramatic, I don't think, to say like save your soul. Like that's how I felt. So, but you do want to know what's going to happen when you go to do that, right? So let's talk about that now. So the first thing is that they're going to maybe try to start going back to what worked for them before. Because remember, there's those 3 different ways that they're, you know, that they interact in relationships. There's the 3 different phases, which is love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. And by the way, I have videos on each one of those if you want to go check them out. But they start off with love bombing, or that idealization phase, where they show up, whether it's, you know, it's not always a romantic, it can be a business situation, which it was for me. And they show up in your space and they seem like they're absolutely perfect. And then they start to devalue you. And then, you know, there's the discard phase, but they kind of go back and forth between the phases. So they're going to go back to what worked before. You know, oh, you know, we can always work this out. We've always been so good together. We've always been able to do things. You know, why do you need to be so rigid? Why do you need to be so difficult? You know, try to like get you to be charmed by them again. You know, whatever that worked before to charm them, they'll go back to that. And sometimes it's called hoovering, where they're basically coming back and saying, oh, you know, maybe they haven't talked to you in a while, and suddenly you get that ping in your inbox or in your DMs or whatever, and you're like, oh, I haven't talked to that person in a while. What are they doing here? So, you know, they're going to go back to trying to charm you in some way. So that's number 1. The next thing is that they may try to escalate their tactics, like come on even stronger, you know, like you barely feel like you can breathe sometimes with them. Like now all of a sudden they're showing up at your house, they're showing up at your office. They happen to be talking to everybody that you know, like you just can't get away from this person. There they are. They may call you incessantly, they may text you incessantly. They may escalate their efforts on all the bad things that they're doing, manipulating situations, projection, denial, deflection, lying, all the things that they normally do, but now on steroids. Because remember, with a narcissist, you're either for them or against them. They're very black and white, you know? So they may escalate their tactics. You see like them coming on much more strongly. And then the third thing that they will likely do when you go no contact is start that triangulation, which is kind of, you know, in the discard phase, that's when you start to see the birth of the smear campaign. So they'll escalate even the triangulation, meaning that they're lining up their flying monkeys. They're talking to people that you know. They want you to feel excluded. They want you to feel isolated. They want you to be punished for going no contact with them. So they want you to think that they're doing great, and you are making a huge mistake by going no contact with them. That they're going to have everybody in your world against you, and everyone's going to line up for them, and everyone's going to think you're the crazy one, or you're the bad one, or maybe you're the narcissist, and they'll try to divide you in that way. So, isolate you, manipulate situations, triangulates, that smear campaign. So that's like kind of all goes into number 3, as far as like triangulation, smear campaign, and lining up flying monkeys against you. So that's the third thing. And if any of you have seen this before, I want you to tell me I've seen it in the comments below, because I'm sure you've totally seen this before. Okay, so now let's talk about the fourth thing. So the fourth thing is that their narcissistic injury could be triggered, and so therefore that narcissistic rage comes flying out. So now they're not just trying to hoover you, they're not just pushing you more, they're not just triangulating, they're not just escalating. Now it's like they're in full-on rage. Like, you will do what I want, you will come back, you will be punished. And sometimes I think they go into this rage state just so that you're afraid, just so that you are punished. Not just that they're angry. I mean, I know that they're angry too. They're like 2-year-olds in adult bodies. So they're literally having a tantrum now. They're literally like super angry. And sometimes during this phase, that's when they start to actually become undone. They start to make mistakes. And that's when you're starting to close in on them. And in a negotiation setting, that's when that your tactics are actually starting to work. And that's when you are actually the most vulnerable to going, oh my God, I don't think I have the stomach for this. But that's when you got to keep going, because narcissists are always the worst right before they're ready to give up. And I do have a whole video on the undoing of a narcissist, which I broke down the show, that Hugh Grant show. That's a really great example of a malignant narcissist who was like continuing to do things, but the more people figured out who he was, the more mistakes he started to make, and that became his undoing. So that leads me to number 5, which is the narcissistic collapse, which sometimes they do. They completely collapse. They just become undone. They don't know what to think about their world, because, they do have a very fragile sense of self. For them, the world is a place of survival, that they have to survive. And so sometimes they do collapse, and that's number 5. And the last thing is that eventually, if you do it the right way, and you create the right strategy, and you have the right leverage, and you figure out how to cut off any source of supply from you, that means you're not intimidated, you're not scared, your fear goes away, all of that, because now they just realize they're not getting any supply from you anymore at all. And they're like vultures, so there's nothing left in this carcass over here. So they will eventually, and this is number 6, go find narcissistic supply somewhere else, because they have to have it. It is what they feed on, it's their lifeblood, it's their oxygen. But you just want to make sure that you are no longer a source of that narcissistic supply for them. So eventually your no contact will absolutely work. All right. They're charming, they're magnetic, but wait, what does their body language reveal? Today, we're diving into the secret world of narcissistic body language, exposing the hidden clues that tell us that maybe you're dealing with a narcissist, and unmasking their hidden body language. So did you know, of course, something like 70% of our language, what we actually communicate, is actually body language, not just the words coming out of our mouth. And so I want to unlock the secrets today. So welcome to another episode where we decipher the world of dealing with toxic people in a powerful way, and where I help you shift that dynamic so that you can become the most powerful one in dealing with the high conflict people in your life. And if you're new here, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Rebecca Zung. I am a negotiation and high conflict expert. I'm also an attorney. I've written a best-selling book, a national bestseller, Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. And I invite you to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so that you can be caught up every single time and learn how to shift that power dynamic too. And for those of you who are coming back, welcome back. It is time in this episode where we decipher the unspoken, the unwinding, and unwinding the threats of narcissists so that you know the nonverbal cues and reveal the concealed emotions and thoughts that narcissists don't want you to know. They put on this mask, right? And they make themselves look perfect for you at the beginning. They get you into their web, and then they start to make your life a living hell. We're going to look into the physical and the other kinds of cues that they may give that they don't necessarily want you to know, right? Signs that you may overlook unless you know what they are. So remember that body language, just like any language, has its own sort of dialects in different countries and different cultures. So I do want to make sure we put that into, I mentioned that. And, sometimes things can be inadvertent. If I mention sort of a scratching of the head, sometimes, you actually might just have an itch on your head. So, you need to kind of approach some of these things with a little bit of an open mind. And sometimes it can be just, you have to take things as a whole, right? So the first one is pursed lips. When you kind of flatten your lips together like this, it's especially if it's in response to a question, like that. And where you can see a really good example of this was when Lance Armstrong was asked if he had been doping. Right away, he gestured like, and you knew that he was about to lie because he was, he didn't really want to answer. And a lot of times when we're withholding and we don't really want to have to answer, and, even narcissists, they'll just purse their lips for a quick moment, and you'll see that flatlining, that pursing of the lips. And even if it's just for a split second, it's just because they don't want to have to answer. They're literally trying to hold something in. So whether it's a lie, like when Lance Armstrong was quizzed about whether he was doping, or it's a subtle attempt for concealing some disdain, it's that little sign that speaks volumes about what's happening beneath the surface. And remember, context is key. One little signal alone doesn't necessarily define a narcissist, but it could mean that somebody is lying. Okay. Another one is sudden distancing behavior. So suddenly, especially, if you see you're in a negotiation or you're having a conversation with somebody and you see somebody immediately step back. And a good example of this was with Russell Crowe in his BBC radio interview, where he was retreating, and he abruptly distanced himself from the situation. They were poking and nagging at him about his vulnerabilities, and he immediately took off. So be aware of those, who immediately remove themselves, physically remove themselves, or it could be just a slouching, sitting back because they just want to physically be back away from that situation. the going gets tough. It may be a defensive mechanism worth exploring. Somebody just, doesn't want to have the conversation anymore. I'm not saying that Russell Crowe is necessarily a narcissist, but if somebody's, distancing themselves, they don't want to have that conversation, they don't want to be poked at because of their vulnerabilities, that's, a sign that, something's going on. A red flag might be, should go up maybe for you. Increased blink rates. A Britney Spears interview, right before she went in, her conservatorship took place. And again, I'm not saying that she's a narcissist. I'm saying that, there was something going on for her that she didn't want to have to reveal. And, she was asked about things that were going on in her life. She was facing tough questions right at that time, and her blink rate noticeably increased. And it's a common response to stress, and it's a subconscious act of not wanting to reveal something. And so you're kind of like shutting out stimuli that's happening out here, going within in a way. So it's not necessarily something bad happening, but it could indicate something more manipulative going on in certain contexts. So again, you want to take all of these things together, and it could mean something. The next sign is avoiding eye contact. So in this particular instance, Kanye West was, the notorious Kanye West was supremely confident most of the time. But in this particular instance, he was in an interview and he's delving into there's sensitive topics. And all of a sudden, he's like refusing to have any eye contact with his interviewer. Right. So, when you look at him and, Mr. Confident refused to have any eye contact. And you can see this many times in other interviews too. Now, again, this is something where, if there's different cultures, some cultures, eye contact actually is a sign of disrespect. So, you have to take into account what culture you're looking at too. Right. So the next one is fidgeting. And, I've seen this in my own practice where somebody starts fidgeting during a deposition, or fidgeting on the stand, or fidgeting in a negotiation of some sort. Somebody starts to move around, they start fidgeting, playing with their hair, they start playing with their hands or something. It can be a sign that they're nervous. It could be a sign that they're cold too, but it could be a sign that they're nervous, so you can look at, different interviews, such as when, Robert Pattinson was, uh, frequently playing with his hair and wardrobe adjustments during the twilight days. Unsettled demeanor, discomfort, can just mean something, right? Stiffening of the body is the next one. Sudden stiffening. You can see somebody stiffen up when a question is asked, or when, a situation happens that they don't like, a rigid posture, so Kristen Stewart, during certain interviews, when she was asked about her personal life, especially, there were certain instances where, things were going on in her life that she didn't like, right? You could see her stiffen up. So sudden change in voice pitch, where somebody's voice is in, one pitch, and then all of a sudden it goes to another pitch. This happens especially with guys a lot of times, where they are in one pitch and then goes up to another pitch. There's several other indications, like touching of their face, like the higher their face, they touch on their face. Sometimes that means something. Obviously some sweating, that can mean something, so there's a number of different things that can denote behaviors of discomfort, suddenly crossing of arms, that can mean something as well, but obviously remember that all of these can also be indicators of, maybe just habits that people have, quirks that people have, that sort of thing. But just take them also in context together, because they can also mean something. Incongruent behavior can mean something as well. Somebody is like, absolutely, absolutely, meaning like they're saying yes, but their body is saying no. They're facing this way, toward the door, but supposed to be in a conversation with you, that's incongruent behavior, things like that. There's, a whole bunch of different things that you can be looking at, clues that reveal that something is happening that may be different than what somebody is actually saying to you. So body language can mean that there's a narcissist going on, that's, or somebody's lying to you, you know somebody asks you a question and then they're interrupting you, right? They're not listening to you. They're not waiting around to hear the rest of the conversation. They're just looking up,